Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Welcome to r/Tales from your server, and also IDontWorkHereLady. Why this strange combination, you may ask? Well, because I feel like it, really. I've just had a couple of good stories sitting around from both these subs for ages. Not enough for a video on any one of them in particular, but I think just right for one big combined video. Now, as a word of warning, the posts are quite spread out. This first one actually comes from before lockdown, and I think some of the later ones are already post-lockdown, so just be aware of that. It shouldn't be an issue, so let's get straight into this first one by user/the Silent Chief. To my guys from Quebec, I've been your server for the past 2 years in a row during the Boston Marathon. Both times, 2 of you arrived early to wait for your friend to finish his run, drinking beers and ordering food ahead of time, so your friend would have a banquet waiting for him when he arrived. The last 2 marathons have been brutal, with cold weather and freezing rain, so when your friend finally arrived, he was shaking and barely able to speak from the cold. We rushed as much beer and food into him as possible to get him off death's door. You stuck around for hours, drinking and celebrating, and even though we didn't chat much, watching your friendship warmed my heart. Yesterday, the Boston Marathon would have taken place, before the pandemic. I told my co-workers how I was hoping to wait on my nice Canadian guys again, since by now it's been a highlight of my Marathon Monday shifts. I was looking forward to a 3rd year of waiting on you guys, if only because your runner friend has frankly amazing legs. The marathon is in September now. By then, I'll have moved out of the state and halfway across the country. Just know that even mundane, good-natured interactions and displays of friendship can leave a lasting impression on someone, especially in such a grueling, thankless profession. And why I wanted to include this one first is because sometimes, just sometimes, these subs do have a nice, heartwarming little story, and that's exactly what I want to share with you. But with that said, let's move on to the next one by user/local librarian. This one was pretty popular, so chances are you've heard it, but it's absolutely awesome, so I reckon we'll give it a shot. I used to work for a chain convenience store, and back in the late 80s, it ran into financial trouble. Corporate decided that to cut costs, they would sell off and shut down all locations that didn't have a gas station attached. This included my location. Once the stores were sold or closed, our positions would be eliminated, and we'd be out of a job. Although I was only the assistant manager for our location, I was effectively running things, as corporate had decided to pull my manager off to a different location. And the assistant would be good enough since the store was closing anyway. Now, onto the story. The cast are HH, the head honker guys from corporate, Ken, the entitled dude who bought the location, and of course, OP. Once Chain announced that they were closing the stores, it was no secret that we would be shutting down. Of course, us employees were still expected to give good customer service. That was usually no problem, as we were in a good area and had pretty decent customers. They liked us, we liked them, but at the same time, we had no flips to give for the occasional Karens. It was nice being able to shut them down. What were you gonna do? Fire us? Good times. I wish I could remember specific instances, but 30 years, they all kinda run together now. The most entitled of all, though, was Ken. Turns out he'd bought our location from the chain and would be taking over in a month and a half. During this time, I was working with the head honko guys from corporate, doing things at store level for the sale. Meanwhile, Ken came in a few times a week, demanding that certain things be done, as if he already owned the place. He wanted us to change displays, order specific products, and etc. Head honko guys had already told me to ignore his demands, so all of them were met with some variation of, "No Ken, I work for Chain, not you. This isn't your store yet." Which sent Ken off in his huffling glory, yelling that I wouldn't be acting like that once he ran the place. Fast forward to a final day, all the other employees had worked their last shifts, and as acting manager, I opened the store that morning. Head honko guys arrived to go through whatever they needed, and shortly before noon, Ken showed up. Ken and the head guys went in the back, and once they came back out, we closed the store in order to finalize everything. Head honko guys and I cashed out the register for the last time, and most importantly, I turned over my key to the store. Once that was done, something close to the following happened. "Okay Ken, we're all done, it's all yours now." They start packing up to leave. Just making sure, Chain no longer owns this location. Ken's in charge now, yes? The head honko confirms this, so I step out from behind the counter. Of course, Ken starts yelling. I think yelling was his default mode. Where do you think you're going? Home? What does it look like? You get back here and get your butt back behind that counter where it belongs. No, I don't work for you. What do you mean, no? I told you things would be different when I took over, and now you have to do what I tell you to do. Me, with a huge grin on my face. You just don't get it, do you? Ken looks confused. You bought the store, you bought the inventory, you did not buy the employees. And sure as hell, you didn't buy me. So I'll say it one last time, and try to get this through to whatever functional cells may be floating around in your empty head. I don't work for you. Never have, never will. And since chain store number 1234 no longer exists, I don't work there anymore either. Since I'm no longer needed here, not at the head honker guys, I'm leaving. Ken starts sputtering and yelling incoherently, realizing he now has nobody to work the register, as I walk to the doors for my last time. Of course, I can't help myself. As I'm pushing the door open, I turn around, give Ken my best customer service smile, and a cheery, have a nice day. If I remember correctly, the store didn't open again for a couple of days at least, while Ken tried to hire some employees. But anyone from the neighborhood who had seen him treating us so badly before the sale wanted nothing to do with him. And even once it reopened, it didn't last long. Oh, what can I say in response to this one? Possibly, don't insult employees until they're officially yours. Though I don't think that is a particularly good piece of advice. Though you do have to realize the importance of the being a decent person factor of management and not just being a jerk to all your employees. That tends to make business run smoother, at least from what I've seen from Reddit. And here's our next post, again back to r/talesfromyourserver by user/qtarchisis. I worked for years in an upscale restaurant owned by a Greek family. If you've ever worked for a Greek family, you know that if you're there for years, you are family. In the decade that I waited tables there, I had exactly 2 experiences that upset me due to customers. One involved the grabbing of my body parts by a drunk customer, and ended up with the owner, head waiter, 2 busboys, the chef and dishwasher yelling at him in 4 different languages. He ended up in the dumpster. I'm not sure he knows completely what happened. And I've got to say, I would have loved to see something like that. Sounds like it would make for an awesome piece of footage. The other was this. The man was by himself, and a jerk to start out. He was wearing a very nice suit with a pocket square. He was whatever a male Karen is called. His food was too slow, not right, too cold, blah blah blah. After the 4th time his reorder came, it was apparently fine. Or the 3 martinis kicked in. The staff was keeping an eye on him too, because I never complained about a customer, except him. When I came by to ask if he wanted any dessert, his response was, "You covered in whipped cream, honey." Then he slapped my butt. I was livid. I had a pitcher in my hand to refill water. Yep, right over his head. He started screaming and yelled for the owner. She came out and he stood there dripping wet while yelling at her that he wanted me fired immediately. I just stood there with my arms crossed. She looked at me and said, "You dumped water on him?" Yep, he smirked. He deserves or accident. He turned red, getting ready to yell again. He absolutely deserved it, I replied. She started out in English, but at some point went to Greek. Without turning around, she made a "come here" gesture toward the kitchen. Every male in the kitchen came out and stood behind us. After a bit of back and forth, she ended with, "This good girl, she not mad easy. She handle party of 60 herself. She do this, then you a bad man. You pay, leave good tip, then you never come back to any of my restaurants." I think the table of firemen, some regulars of mine by the way, standing up also helped make her point. She took his picture and made sure all 5 of her restaurants in our not very big town had a copy and his name. And it's good to know that some owners won't stand for this type of behaviour. That is something that is truly good to hear. Once again, this second one is something I would have loved to see in person. Not be on the receiving end of it though, that is an important distinction to make, but to see it, I would have loved it. And here's our next post by user/Vigran. This was years ago. My husband was in the army on his second enlistment. 5 or 6 years total at this point. We were at a new base overseas and I'd gotten a job at the after-school fair facility on post. Well, his unit was getting ready to deploy for 6 months, so they were in the thick of all that. The chaplain was having a pre-deployment meeting for all the spouses to talk about the changes to expect while our spouses are deployed. From practical issues to emotional stuff to disruptions and routine. Bear in mind, this was back when if you were really lucky, you maybe got a 10-minute call from your spouse once a month. Maybe an email as well. Letters were still more common than anything. Now, both my husband and I are pretty easygoing, and we'd been through a couple deployments, so I already knew the drill, what to expect, how to manage, and etc. So I decided not to bother with the meeting. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a fantastic resource for spouses, and they will do a post-employment one as well, to help everyone transition back to normal life with their spouses. But I didn't feel the need to attend. Couple days later, my husband shows up at my workplace, and tells me he's been ordered by his lieutenant to bring me to the spouse meeting. This was a second lieutenant who was fresh out of OCS, was not prior enlisted, and my husband had socks older than this guy's term of military service. For those who don't know, a second lieutenant is the lowest ranked officer. They're the noobs, and it's very common for them to think they know it all and act accordingly. This guy was one of those. I was highly peeved, but not for one moment did I blame my husband. I could tell he was annoyed as well, and I knew that since it was a direct order, that he had to obey it. I thought for a minute and asked him to hang on a minute so I could talk to my boss. Now, school was set to let out soon, and they needed me there because of adult-child ratio requirements. But I explained the situation to my boss, and told her I'd be back as soon as possible. She understood the situation, and said she'd fill in for me till I could get back. She was cool that way, and everyone on base, if they weren't military, was the spouse of one, due to being on an overseas base. So they all knew and understood when stuff like this came up. Very rarely, you'd get the random GS employee civilian on post, but yeah, that was highly unusual. So I left with my husband, but instead of going to the chaplain's meeting, I told him to take me to his building, where the second lieutenant was. He knew what I was up to and happily complied. I arrived at the lieutenant's office, knocked, and went in while my husband stood in the hall. Asked him why he had ordered my husband to fetch me from my job that I was needed at. He rather pompously mansplained to me that this was a required function and that I needed to attend. Oh, I let him have it. I didn't raise my voice much, but I informed him in no uncertain terms that he had no authority whatsoever to order me to do anything. I was not in the military, not subject to his whims, and while he may be able to order my husband to come get me, he could not order me to go to this meeting. He tried interjecting at this point to say that I needed to go so that I would learn stuff about how to handle my husband being on deployment. At this point, I nearly blew my top. I've spent more time with my husband being in the field and on deployment than you've spent in the military. My husband doesn't own me, he cannot force me to do anything, and neither can you. I will not be attending this meeting, and you will not force my husband to take me there. I'm going back to my job, and if I hear that you tried to make his life miserable because of it, I will go up your chain of command and make sure you regret it. Now, the building wasn't full, but it wasn't quite empty either. Oh, and the higher-ups were in the offices pretty close by. They were also super cool cats. My husband might have been enlisted, but they respected the work he did, and he respected them. And this lieutenant had been getting on their nerves as well. So yeah, they absolutely could hear what was going on, and I'm sure they enjoyed it. By the end of my tirade, the second lieutenant was nearly falling over himself to apologize. Sorry, Mom. I apologize, Mom. It won't happen again, Mom. He knew he was in the wrong. And by this point, he also knew I'd make a right royal stink if he tried to make me do anything or tried to punish my husband for my actions, or lack thereof. I left and my husband took me back to my job, grinning like a fool. I was still pretty enraged at this point, but was cooling off pretty rapidly. For a few weeks afterward, I actually was concerned that there might be fallout for my husband because of what I did. But there wasn't. At least no more than the usual BS he dealt with on a daily basis. It was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. Like I said, I'm pretty laid back normally. But I will get steamed on other people's behalf. The problem is that I almost never have the opportunity or the right to get involved. and I recognize that sometimes doing so would definitely make bad worse. So, having this opportunity was just golden. And yes, OP, sometimes I guess it doesn't hurt to put people back in their place, to let them know that they have no control over you and that they better not mess with you. Because otherwise, as we have seen so often in a variety of subreddits, you'll be dealing with all sorts of garbage for a long time. And here's our next post, back to r/talesfromyourserver by user/porkchop2022. Last week, glorious night. Party of 6 comes in, headed by a Karen. Wants 2 4 high tops pushed together. Host says, can't do it. Social distancing. You'll be too close to the other table next to you now. Let me speak to the manager. She's calm, but insistent, and it's obvious she's played the card before. I roll up. How can I help? Can we push these 2 tables together? No, can't. Social distancing, and now you're too close to the next table. You can have that table that's for 6 in the corner, you can have that booth for 6 after we clean it. Or you can have that table for 6 outside after they get up. About 10 minutes. All the while, I'm pointing to each table like I'm showing them the emergency exits on an airplane. You can't push those tables to... No. We will not be moving tables. You can have, and point out the tables again. You know what I think, as she begins turning to her friends. You know what I think? Both of them together. We go somewhere else. At this point, I clap my hands together and say, thank you and have a great night, and immediately turn around and walk away. The best part is, Karen stares at the back of my head for a solid 2 seconds before she shuffled out. I didn't realize this until I watched the video of the exchange. Easily made number 3 in my career highlight reel, but only one of a handful of Karen moments since we reopened. Wow, this is number 3. Number 1 and number 2 must be pretty good then. I would like to hear them. And just like with the last one, being stern definitely help. Last thing you want to do is be breaking the law and putting your customers in danger. I think that was a good riddance, and you didn't let the Karen cause more trouble than she should have. And here's the next one, still from the same sub, by user/mcmacaque. We're in New York, I'm a server/waitress at a pizza chain restaurant. Stopped doing dine-in after we went into quarantine at the end of March. Doing curbside only, people still try to come into the store. Every day, I have to tell someone, despite what the options on our website, we aren't really giving people a choice of coming in and picking up your order. Please return to your car and we will bring your order out to you, or something to that extent, whatever. There's a lot to unpack about this place. It's been a rough couple of months, but it could be worse. I've seen posts on here that make my place look saintly. One good moment in the sea of depravity. I'd been closing down the front after a long 4 hours of curbside carry-out. Saw this young guy moping around, walking to the grocery store across the street. I was getting ready to lock the door when he started walking toward my building, and he looked desperate. I popped open the door and waited for him to approach. What you need, bud? Could I possibly get some water? He looked super pale and asked shakily and seemed super, I don't know, sad? Maybe a bottle or something, I'll take whatever. I can do a to-go cup for you, is that okay? Oh my gosh, that would be awesome, thank you. I recently got heart surgery done, lifts up shirt to show me the healing scar. And I'm just super thirsty and didn't have enough cash for the grocery store. I go and grab him the cup of water, a straw, and give it to him. He thanks me again profusely, and walks away looking like it was Christmas morning. I don't know, it's stuck with me these last few weeks. Wherever he is, I hope he's doing better. Look, OP, you're a nice person, I like it. But this guy, what's he doing walking around right after heart surgery? Surely if you've just had heart surgery, lie down, relax, don't walk around. If you need water, take water with you, but just avoid somehow endangering yourself. Anyway guys, I think that post will be the last one for today. I don't think I'll ever do this format again. The combining 2 subreddits, it just doesn't seem to work. I keep forgetting what subreddit I'm on, you probably keep forgetting what subreddit you're on. Just makes life confusing, and I'd rather wait a little bit longer for a few more good stories. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to the channel for Reddit videos 3 times every single week. But with that said, that is it from me. I hope you all enjoyed, and all I want to do is see you all here next time. See you later, guys.